This is the Success Through Community podcast.
Speaking of Mal, you are a bad influence because I've already bought 2 copies of the book that she hasn't even released yet.
Well, I used a credit to reserve it on Audible, or
Yeah.
pre-order, whatever you want to
Me
call
too.
it. So
And I got the paperback as well. So, Mel aside, we are going to talk about somebody else who's just as inspiring and amazing in my eyes. Today, I want to talk about the book All In by Arlene Dickinson. Now, I know I mentioned it to you when we were kind of going over the season a little bit, but did I tell you who she is in that episode?
you did. You explained it because it's like Shark Tank, which we have here, but you guys have it. It's different, yeah.
Yeah, it's Dragon's Den here.
Dragon's Den.
So she's considered a dragon.
Okay, but
Yeah, which I think is cool.
But the sharks are, and I'm assuming the dragons is the same difference, but like the sharks are also business owners known for like particular business. Like why, how did she become a dragon? Let's just put it that way. What did she do that got on the radar to become a dragon?
Find out in the book, but in short.
Well, I'm not reading the book right now. You're telling me about the book right now.
But you will after this, you will. So Arlene is one of Canada's, so Dragon's Den is, as we all know, the whole Shark Tank kind of thing, but it is Canada's version. And Arlene Dickinson is the original dragon. She is the only one that is still on this show. So when she was 30-something, she was a dedicated wife. She made sure the house was clean, the dinners were cooked, baked fresh bread. She was that perfect wife. And then things kind of went awry, and she found herself as a single mom and having to restart everything. And when she did that, she started her own business. She has gone through a few companies since she started that, but I believe her company now, and maybe even was then, is called Venture Capital. And it is an investment company.
Oh.
So she's the perfect dragon.
Okay.
Right. So she actually started an investment company from the boots up and did it all on her own. And her drive was basically to put food on the table. So she was driving to something, right? You know, that rowboat analogy.
Right.
But Arlene, so she started this venture capital company and basically became one of the top business women in the country, and hard and fast and very successful. And she's got branches. And she even talks in the book about how she grew too big too fast, opened up a bunch of branches, and then now she's spreading herself too thin. And now they all collapse. So there's that conversation about failure and all of that stuff, right? But I picked up this book for multiple reasons. One, I have a lot of respect for Arlene Dickinson as a woman, as an entrepreneur, as a philanthropist, as a human. You know, what I know of her. So the persona she puts out there that I know of, I have a lot of respect for. And she seems very authentic. So I don't think that it's fake by any means. Because it's kind of hard with shows like Dragon's Den to hide your personality. I don't know if you saw the most recent scandal on Dragon's Den, but it was a doozy. Anyway, we can go over that another day. She wasn't involved, but she did a lot of eye rolling that episode. I'll be honest, I picked it up because I was expecting kind of a work-life balance, how to kind of expectation from the book, but it didn't give me that at all. She has other plans for people who read this book, and it was exactly what I needed, even if it wasn't what I expected. And I love this book, and I think everybody should read it. I think women in general should read it, whether you're a business owner or not. I really think people should read it. It really does focus heavy on entrepreneurship. It is about being an entrepreneur, but there are so many strong life lessons in this book, and I think everybody should read it.
So something that I was curious a little bit about, the title. So at first, when you mentioned it to me before, and when I saw it on your list of what you were reading, you know, my first thought, of course, naturally is being all in on your business, not having what did we call it in the mastermind? A jobby, taking it seriously, basically. You know, this is not a hobby.
Yeah.
And maybe that is what she means by it. But then I started wondering, is all in some sort of Dragon's Den catchphrase or something? Is there any relationship there?
No, none at all.
Okay.
None at all. So the only connection to Dragon's Den this book has is the author. She
Got it.
tells a few stories about how she got there and a few experiences. Like she reflects on, her experiences, but there's no connection or correlation otherwise, which is great.
Gotcha.
So based off the description of the book, like you said, the title is All In. I kind of thought, it's exactly what we have talked about. Don't have that jobby. This is a business. It's not a hobby, right? But looking at the book description, I figured it was a good read for, for me at the time and for the podcast, because I thought the book was going to focus on work-life balance. Like, I really thought it was going to be this, how to be a successful entrepreneur and a wife and a mother, and like just to have that success. And it isn't. It is so far from that I was shocked, right? But to me, I found the book to be just a simple book of support. And it's crazy. As I was like, even reading just the introduction, it became very clear to me that this was not going to be one of those step-by-step balancing my life and business kind of books. It was about the internal balancing act that we have to do as an entrepreneur. I think that's why I was so drawn to it, because rather than suggesting how to keep life and work separate and how to have that balance, which is something I'm guilty of doing myself, she kind of suggests you need to be integrating it, that it's not about that segregation. It's about bringing all of you and being all in into everything we do, right? And it's about alignment and not separation, which if you've been around for the past 6 months, which you have been, I'm all about alignment, right? Like that is my new thing. Alignment is my word right now. So when, like I said, just in the introduction, when it kind of says you need to kind of be all of you, it sucked me in, and it sucked me in so far that I was down a rabbit hole, and it just took all of me when I was reading this book. So like you mentioned,
I'm
the
sorry, was that an
title,
intentional pun? Because if it wasn't, it was amazing.
I'm thinking it wasn't, because I have no idea what you
Because you're saying it's like about being all in, and you said it took all of you.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
anyways. Sorry, I hear puns
You're right,
everywhere.
because you're punny. I love
Oh.
you. Uh, no, I didn't actually intend that, but it is so true, though. The title and how it sucked all of me in. That's so great. Because, yeah, okay. That was good.
Sorry,
We
I
can
didn't
edit
mean.
that out, and I'm going to go, what was?
No, I didn't mean to sidetrack you. I was just confused. Okay,
That's
go
okay.
for it.
Well, it's okay. But, well, we're talking about the title, right? So it's exactly that. It's exactly that. You can't just kind of tiptoe into being an entrepreneur. It's about the full commitment. It's about committing to the journey, even when it's uncomfortable, even when things start to look a little scary and risky, because it isn't something you can do half-heartedly, right? And we've learned this ourselves. In order to feel like you are doing something, you have to be all in. Like I felt this in my bones because, hey, okay, we're going to step back here. If I'm honest, when I started my first business, it consumed every part of my being. I was what she defines as all in. Yet with my second business, I was worried because with the first one, it took over my life. And after a while, I ended up overwhelmed and I stepped back. Like when COVID hit, it was a blessing for me. COVID was such a blessing. I lost a lot of money. I had to give a lot of money back to my clients, but it helped me realize where I was heading because I was too far gone into the business.
Yeah.
So for me and my second business, I was so worried that I would do the same thing. So instead of setting boundaries, I tried to separate business from personal life, and it doesn't work. And especially after reading this book, I realize it really doesn't work. And if you are a solopreneur, like most of our listeners are, like we are, that separation is not going to fly because as an entrepreneur, we are consumed by our company, right? It takes every waking thought of us and we can't deny it. And when we try to separate it, it's where we come into trouble. So Yet with my second business, I was totally worried I would burn out and I would end up doing the same thing. So instead of actually setting boundaries, which you really should do, I tried to really separate my business from my personal life. And that doesn't work, especially when we're a solopreneur, right? Like, you know this as much as any of us do. As an entrepreneur, it's part of who we are. We're consumed by it. Nearly every waking hour is our business. And we're always thinking about how to improve it, how to grow it, how to learn more, to make it better, all of those things. So, like, how many times have you been out with friends or at an event, anything, and somebody said something to you that you could not wait to get back home to implement some sort of inspired thought based on what they said into your company? It happens all
Yeah,
the
like
time.
all the time. I mean, this is one of the reasons why I I use the mobile app for Trello, because
Yeah.
when those things, I'm the kind of person where if I can't do it right now, whatever the thought is, if I don't write it down, it is gone.
Gone.
Like,
I
it
know
just,
that.
like, there may be some hint of like, "Oh, yeah, there was that cool idea," but not to the point where I can, like, do it. So, that's what I use my brain dump for in Trello, is that, like, literally in that moment while somebody's talking, or I may, like, excuse myself to the restroom so that I can have a minute without, rudely pulling out my phone in front of someone, and I will just put that thought in there
Yeah. And
so
it's
that I
great.
can do that when I get home, because it happens all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. As a photographer and an artist, I can't walk by or into a room or by a building without going, "Mm, a bride would be perfect there. Oh, a baby would be great right there." Like, it's just one of those things. It drives Sal nuts, but it's part of who I am. Right. And I think that's why one of the reasons why the photography business was so successful is because I was all in. I was all consumed by it. Like I said earlier, it totally took over my life to a very negative standpoint. So that's why I tried to separate it. But one of my favorite quotes in the book that Arlene says is, "When you work for someone else, you're on the beach wishing you never had to return to work, asking yourself, why do I get so little holiday time? But when you're running your own show, you're likely to be thinking, in just 3 days, I'm back to the land of decent cell reception." And I went, holy cow, that is so true. Like,
It is true, but it also makes me a little sad.
you know, another dragon, actually, this is funny. It was years ago I heard another dragon say this, and I think this is part of how I got so consumed in my photography business. He said, when you're an entrepreneur, you're never really on vacation. Yes, you can go out to the beach and to Bali and picnics and all that stuff, but if you don't bring your work with you to at least do, whatever it is you do, depending on your company, for a little bit, then you could be putting yourself at risk of not being successful. He said it way more articulately than that. I'll see if I can find the quote, but it hit
I
home.
track with you.
Thanks. It's one of those things where, I'm going to LA for, essentially it's a business trip, but it's also a pleasure trip because it's a business trip to go to, Universal Studios and hang out with a bunch of kids. Like, this is work for me. This is great. But also, I'm like, what's the Wi-Fi going to be like? What's the internet going to be like? And on my downtime, where am I going to put my laptop? What's my, can I write while I'm there? Can I read more for the podcast? Like, this is work stuff as much as it's going to be relaxing stuff. And you can't deny it, Kelly, because I have evidence.
Oh, no, I'm not.
Plus,
Not denying it.
like, you were on a retreat. It was a work retreat, but there was supposed to be downtime, me time. And what were you doing? You were reading,
I was reading for the podcast.
which
But look,
is what?
I'm not denying it. But you did just say a minute ago, it was a business retreat. This was not vacation. So I
Yes,
did not
there's a
see
difference.
it as it, there is a difference. But yeah, I'm not denying it at all. Like, it's absolutely true. I'm just saying, I hope that I'm able to, have that mindset and be all in, as it were, without losing my ability to unplug and enjoy being unplugged. Because
Ye-
that's the part that feels a little sad. Like, yes, I want to get back to my business. I love doing what I'm doing, but I also love spending time and being present with who I'm with. And so I don't want to lose that, if that's
You
what
know
I
what?
mean by
You
that.
totally hit the nail on the head there, right? Like, absolutely hit the nail on the head because that's basically what she's trying to say. She's trying to say you need to be all in. You need to be 100% all in. And when you are working, your personal person, the wife in you, the mother in you, the singer, the actress, whoever you are, needs to be present. And when you are also just having dinner with your husband, the entrepreneur in you needs to be present because you cannot compartmentalize who you are. And you are an entrepreneur. You are a wife. You are someone who likes to go on vacation and read a book. So it's one of those things where it is going all in, unapologetically, just being who you are, but without giving up who you are. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It totally makes sense. I mean, who you are as a person, all the labels that you aspire to and, identify with and whatever are all a part of what makes you a good entrepreneur. It's not
Yeah.
it's not like you have separation of that, like who you are in life. I mean, it's literally as a solopreneur, it's literally exactly what your business is because your brand is you. So of course you have to bring all of you into your business in that way. I totally get that.
Yeah. Yeah. Because when we compartmentalize, like I was doing, separating the business from the personal, when we are blocking pieces of who we are, of pieces of that make us whole, we're thinking that this part of me is enough. And that's not true. Whether it's for your business or your personal life, that's not true. This little part of you is not enough. We want and need all of you, whether I'm a client, whether I'm your friend. I need all of you, not just pieces. Right. And that's
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
the all encompassing, theme behind the book is because when you're uniting the parts of you that really drive you in both your business and your personal life, then you're all in. Now, there's going to be sacrifices, but I'm not saying that when you go on vacation, you can't be on vacation. What I'm saying is that as an entrepreneur, you can be on vacation and you're going to grab your phone and you're going to brain dump on that Trello board because that's the entrepreneur in you, right? So it's not set it and forget it and walk away from a week. And like, even as even CEOs of multi-million dollar companies and owners of like these big, big, big companies, when you get to a point in your company when it can run without you, I think personally, I think that's kind of a sad thing because that company started as
Yeah.
a piece of who you are. And there are pieces of that company that can never be outsourced because that is who you are.
True. It's
Right.
true.
And
And it's sorry, and not to interrupt, but
uh,
it's interesting that you say that because I just saw, I think it was a video or something about Dave Ramsey. I think we all know Dave Ramsey, right?
yep, yep, yep.
Yeah. Okay. So he obviously, when he started Dave Ramsey, whatever, when he started his business, like it is all him. Like he was
Yeah.
the brand, is the brand. But like, at some point he'd like to retire, but now there's all these people who rely on him for their livelihood. So he's not going to just be like, okay, guys, I'm done.
Yeah.
Good luck,
Yeah. Exactly.
So I saw this thing where he was talking about how he has spent the last couple of years, not wanting to just drop the entire business on his daughter who has been working with him, but like trying to figure out, well, how do I step away to the point that it doesn't just collapse the entire company? And so he started like a couple years ago. His goal was to like, I think it was by the end of this year, get to the point where like 50% of the revenue in the company was not non-Dave income is what he was calling it.
I love that.
And yeah, and as of whenever he was filming that podcast episode, they were at 78% non-Dave income.
Oh, I could see.
So that
Oh,
he is
brilliant.
like now at a place where he can retire, but like he has put so much of himself into this. And like I think for me it's heartening to see that too, because I mean, he's
Yeah.
not quote a creator, but he has become a creator. And so even when he's no longer actively, putting out the new episodes and whatever, his content lives on forever. And like in his case, his wisdom is timeless. So like it's
And
not like it needs to be updated every year
yeah,
to stay
absolutely.
relevant. So he had a strategy for that. He had kind of like an exit strategy. So I don't know when he's planning to retire, but he's definitely heading in that direction and setting his business, his company up to survive without him. And I think that's really cool.
I think that's brilliant. And it's scary that there is that potential that had he not had that foresight, that entire company could have crashed. And for someone like
Yeah.
Dave Ramsey, for that company to just, dissolve, whether it be file for bankruptcy or just start losing money to the point where they start downsizing, that'd be scary. So for our listeners who don't know who Dave Ramsey is, he's an author, he's a speaker, he is a radio personality, he's a lot of things, but to me, he's a hero because I followed his snowflake method, I believe it's called. So he
Snowball
snowball,
method.
thank you.
Yes.
That
You are very unique, but it is a snowball method. Yes.
he ends just snowflake. Not your Canadian little frostbitten
Yeah.
girl. So Dave Ramsey, he talks about money and budgeting and all of these things, and his snowball method totally got Sal and I out of debt to a point where we are now in the green or in the black, I guess it's called. I call it green because, here ain't many.
It's
Um,
green money. Yeah, I'm with you.
yeah. So that's who Dave Ramsey is. And for his company to just dissolve because he decided he wanted to retire, yeah, it's a huge company. And there's a lot of people relying on him. And even for small
Yeah.
companies, that isn't like a multi-gazillion company like his, any company that whoever started it, there's a piece of them involved. And it only grew because that person was involved. So as much as we see online, a lot of those new online coaches and gurus out there like outsource, outsource. Even if you can't afford it, sell your children's toys so you can afford a VA so you can take time to create. When you start outsourcing everything, you start losing the core of the company, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's another piece of all in. I might have to outsource my bookkeeping because numbers and I do not get along, but that's why I am not a numbers company. Know what I mean? I don't teach
Right.
budgeting. Right? Like
Right.
it's just
Right.
it's not in my wheelhouse.
Yeah,
So
but you're not outsourcing creation of your content.
exactly. Because that is in my wheelhouse. I'm not, I went through, okay, here's a perfect example when it comes to business and outsourcing. When I started my photography business, I went in full throttle and I got a loan and I actually purchased a studio. And the scary thing with that is it came with photographers. And so I was outsourcing photography. I was hiring photographers that were already working for this studio to do weddings and portraits and all this stuff. But then I realized they can't shoot like me. And I wanted the photography company to have a certain look, to have a certain vibe and feel and everything. And so my photographers, I just started letting them go. I'm like, nope, nope, nope. If you can't do it this way, you can't do it. Till it was just me. And when it became just me and I was all in and I was walking down the street going, I want to put a baby on that curb, that's when everything fell into place. That's when it started to become successful because it was now my company, what I believed in, what I wanted to do, my vision. And I just
So
outsourced
so let me ask you
everything.
something. Do you regret ever, like, looking back on that, do you regret having bought the studio? Like, do you ever wish that you had just, like, started it on your own and built it up?
Not at all. Not
Okay.
in the slowness. I learned so much. And you know what? I'm not going to lie. That thanks for Dave Ramsey. That studio put me so far in debt because it was not bringing in what I paid for it. We had this beautiful 5-year plan and it was going to make all this money and do all these things. But then the artist in me was like, no, we got to do it this way. And the numbers girl, they didn't balance. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I learned so much about where to draw the line on business. And I learned a lot of things. Like I would sit my heels in the sand for things that didn't matter and I would lose clients over it, but they mattered to me. Looking back, I realized who cares? Like, what would it matter? I could have kept that client. Like if I had just caved for this stupid insignificant thing, but I had policies, quote unquote, in place to protect, quote unquote, me and my company. And those kind of things taught me so much about how to run a company, on how to stick with your values without giving yourself up. And I still shoot. And I love that I'm now a freelance and that Dave Ramsey saved my life when it came to getting out of debt and making it work. Like the company was so successful at one point, and it was a thing of beauty. It bought me my house.
That's
But
awesome.
what ended up happening over time is, like I said, it consumed me because I was too far in. I wasn't just all in, I was dangerously in. Because even as like my kids are adults now, as you know, and when they're adults, you can have these kind of conversations about childhood and trauma. And my son said something to me once, and I can't remember why we were talking about it or what the conversation was fully. But what I do remember about the conversation was how he said, "That's okay. I know you were working and you were working to support us." And it hit me in the gut. I had missed too much of his childhood. We're really close now and we see each other whenever we can, but I had missed too much of his childhood. When my kids were sick, instead of keeping them home from school and, watching The Price is Right with, chicken soup and ginger ale, they were on a beanbag at my studio in the back because I had to work. And those are the kind of things, that's the kind of thing I regret. Those are the things I regret as opposed to all the other lessons I took. But with that being said, I also realized that had I not been all in, I guarantee I wouldn't have been able to buy this house. I just wish I knew about boundaries back then, but I do know now,
Yeah,
right?
so getting to that though, like, okay, so if Arlene is saying, yeah, I get where she's going with all in. I feel like I'm on board with the concept. But how does she explain how to avoid what you're describing, the dangerously all in?
So that's where this book is amazing. Like we really talked heavily on the work-life balance aspect of this book, which I think is so great, but it's only one chapter. And the whole chapter talks about how it's a big fat lie, right? That there is no balance, there's no split, there's no in between, that you have to integrate your business life with your personal life to run a successful business. And she doesn't tell you how not to fall into that trap. But what she does do is covers everything else so that if you kind of have all the right tools in place, that you will not fall into that trap. Right. So whether it's for your business or your personal life, reminding that you can find that peace and success and be unapologetically who you are and bring it all together, then you're going to be able to find that quote unquote work life balance, which doesn't exist. You're just going to be able to go with confidence. You're going to be able to know how to set boundaries and say no and be able to be like, you know what? No, this is my kids' weekend. I'm not answering the phone for this weekend, and that's okay. So being all in doesn't necessarily mean falling into the trap I did. It just means being able to integrate the two, the relationships, the life, the business, the world, without giving up who you are, right? Because if you're uniting those two parts of you that drive both your business and your personal life, you are all in. And if you find a way to be able to unite them peacefully and be happy with it, you're going to be more successful, and it's not going to suck you into that rabbit hole of losing everything. And she
Yeah.
goes into relationships. She talks about the reality of being married to somebody who's not an entrepreneur. They don't understand how all encompassing it is, because being an entrepreneur, you are a special breed, right? And
Yes, we are.
yeah. But she doesn't go on how to have a relationship with someone who isn't. She just discusses her own experiences with things like canceling date night or missing their children's soccer game, or, all the guilt and shame that comes along with all of it and how to handle that. Right? This book is more of an emotional support system than it is a how-to. It's like they did the entire chapter on how to learn to live with failure. And she goes over with some really good ones that, her values, which I've mentioned before. So I think that's just it. So she doesn't tell you how not to fall into that trap. She just tells you how to move forward with confidence and how to be all in. so that you can be all in without losing yourself, without losing relationships, without losing everything. So if you're looking for a book that just tells you how to run a business, or if you're looking for a book that tells you how to find that balance, this isn't the one. This is definitely not the one.
For you, and a couple times you've used the word boundaries a lot. And
That,
to me, it's like that is the how to. She's just not telling you how to set boundaries. But
yeah, exactly.
I'm assuming that's coming from not just you, but from her, the concept
Yeah,
of boundaries. Like no
yeah,
boundaries in your personality per se, but boundaries in your life. And when, you set your priorities, you stick to them, basically.
exactly. And it's also, she also, more or less covers the fact that even when you don't stick to them, you really have to give yourself grace. It's okay that you're not perfect. It's okay that you said you weren't going to pick up your phone this weekend, but you did. It's okay that you said you were going to pick up your phone, but you didn't. Right? Like it's okay. She mentions Brene Brown a couple of times in the book. Remember the book Daring Greatly?
Of
Which
course.
we all know and love here at Success the Community. But it's the entire chapter on living with failure talks about and going over shame and guilt. And it doesn't matter who you are, we are going to feel those things 9 out of 10 times, and how to move past it. And like I said, give yourself grace, right? So this book, like you said, is not the how to. It's a reminder that you're not alone. It is a reminder that it's okay if you are struggling, because we all do.
Yeah.
It's permission to be a hot mess, right? You need to show up and be all in, flaws and all, and be who you are. I love that the book isn't filled with typical business advice. And for me, this book was like holding up a quick mirror. It was asking me, are you truly being true to yourself on the journey? Are you all in, or are you half-assing it? And that is worth more to me than a productivity book. That is worth more to me than Blue Ocean Strategy, because without a good, solid, emotional take on the journey that you're going to take as a business person, and without being able to really comprehend what you're doing and how you're going to go through, and all the ups and downs and the guilt and the shame and the highs that you're going, you got the sale, the excitement, the celebrations. If you're not willing to embrace all of it and all of who you are, and no business strategy is going to get you anywhere. Right. I found it really did make me stop and think. I'm kind of half-assing it with one company, but I was all in with the other. And I need to find how to not separate and integrate all of it together so that it is a life of balance. But it's not that search for balance. Like it's a conundrum, because the word balance is so lovely, but that's not what I want to look for. And that's not what I want to encourage people to look for. As I ramble, I'm just gonna cut it, because you know what? We talked about work-life balance on this book, and that's not my intention, because it consumed me. And the book has such a short chapter on the work-life balance, because it's this big thing that I didn't even get to all of the stories from all the entrepreneurs that are in there and their struggles and her personal struggles. And all of them are very inspiring, because they learned to put themselves out there. They learned to be all in. And she shared all of her lessons about that separation and all of the things, so that we don't have to make those same mistakes, reminding us that we don't have to sacrifice who we are in order to bring all of us to the work that we love. Because if we are all in, we're going to be able to create a business that we love and is going to grow and be great. That's just it. We just have to find how to integrate everything into it and not be completely consumed by it like I was.
The best way that you can support the podcast is to make sure that you are subscribed wherever you're listening and leave us a review. That's the only way that new people will find and join our community. The Success Through Community podcast is hosted by Kelly Gable and Jolene Mills, and all episodes are solely the opinions of the respective host. Our sound production and editing is done by Kelly Gable, and all visual creative, including our logo, was created by Jolene Mills. The Success Through Community podcast is an STC production.